This is the Turn Your Life Around podcast, and I'm the 180 lady. I've been helping people turn their lives around since 2007 as the founder and CEO of a large mental health company. The purpose of this podcast is to have meaningful conversations with old friends and new friends, everyday people just like you and me, about how they turn their lives around. We'll discuss all things mental health, fitness, finances, relationships, parenting, spirituality, you name it. My hope is that you can take something away that will encourage you today. I'm your host, Sarah Coates. Are you ready to turn your life around? I'm your host, Sarah Coates, and I'm here with Shauna Vick. Hello.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks for coming today. I'm going to introduce Shauna to the audience. Shauna experienced a devastating relapse after decades of sobriety and found her way back to sobriety. After this experience, she decided to leave a successful decades-long career as a software sales executive and founded Return to Joy Recovery and Intervention so she could spend the second half of her life helping others navigate their way to recover from addiction and stay sober and thrive, not just survive through life. And so this is a great turning your life around story. I'm so excited to talk to you today and learn more about different points in your life where you've turned your life around and how you can share with the listeners some really great advice on how to get back on track. And I just know you have a great story because we chatted before this. And so I'm excited to hear more about it and share, you share with the audience. So welcome.
Well, thank you so much for that lovely welcome and introduction. Sarah, I'm delighted to be here and have coffee with you. We decided we'd have a cup of coffee while we were chatting. It seems very natural. This is one addiction I have not moved away from, but no buts. I have turned my life around a few times in my life, doing various different things. I've made a lot of changes. Growing up, I was always someone who wanted to actually, once I got into my 20s, I wanted to always achieve and do better. And so it took some turning my life around. I know when we spoke first, I was going to share my story of alcoholism. Because moving away from using alcohol as a self-medicating drug is, integral to my story and my turning my life around. Very quickly, high school, college, drank. I would consider myself a binge drinker. I am from a family, a lineage of alcoholics, so I know I came by it genetically. And I grew up being told that I had a 75% chance of becoming an alcoholic because we had it on both sides. So I was very aware of my relationship with alcohol from the first time that I had a drink. And I will tell you, I was uncomfortable in my skin always from a very early age. I wasn't comfortable with who I am, who I was. I'm very comfortable with who I am today. I'm finally comfortable in my own skin. And for that, I'm really grateful. But, growing up, I was one in a family of four and just, it was fine. My childhood was fine. But I was uncomfortable in my own skin. And when I took that first drink when I was 15 and felt that ease and comfort from the alcohol, from the drink, and I thought, oh man, I do like this. And I liked the way it made me feel. So my love affair with it started from the very first night that I took alcohol. And like I said, in high school and college, I would consider it binge drinking. I didn't get into any trouble because my family was so keenly aware that we could become alcoholics. We always told our parents, no, we don't drink, and whatever. So I actually started living a double life because I would go out on the weekends and be that person and then home studying. And I had to keep up both so that I wouldn't get in trouble. I was very, I didn't want to get in trouble for drinking. And, probably similar to a lot of people's stories. When I was 22, I decided that I had graduated from college. I was starting out my life, and knowing that alcohol had more control over me than I had over it, I just decided it wasn't serving me. So I got into recovery, and I, lived a life. I lived in my 20s and my 30s without any alcohol. So that was a big shift, right? So
Yeah.
I went from being uncomfortable in my skin, needing alcohol to feel comfortable. And then I decided, no, I would like to pursue, uh, you know, I wanted to learn more. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to do things. And I saw alcohol holding me back. Now, that is a real gift because I know a lot of people, it wouldn't, but
Right.
for whatever reason,
Well, at 22, I mean,
yeah,
most 22-year-olds aren't really making that decision to be
no.
sober or to abstain from alcohol. I mean, it's your 20s. People are
So,
trying to live
yeah.
it up. Yeah.
And somehow I told myself, well, I graduated from college. I was living in Toronto, Canada, and
Mm.
I was working. And that's when I started to really seek out a lot of self-help books and how do I improve. And, I would go to the gym and I was exercising and I was working a lot and made it through my 20s and 30s. And I did have a 4-year time in my 30s where I did drink. I thought that I had grown. Now I'm an adult. I can drink like an adult.
Right.
And, it's the stories we tell ourselves too, right? Like whatever justification or rationalization I was selling software. It was the .com era. We
Oh,
were having a
yeah.
lot of fun doing it. There was a lot of pressure. And I remember saying, oh, now I know why people have that drink when they come home from work. Because I went out and I had a drink and I felt that.
Yeah.
Your shoulders go down, you relax into it, and you can feel that disconnect from the day or the stress. It increased over those 4 years, but it wasn't terrible. I didn't get a DUI. I didn't lose my jobs. I was successful. I was
Right.
transferred to Dallas to head up a sales territory there. So I didn't see that. I wouldn't even have called myself a high functioning alcoholic.
Right.
Because I was in denial, because that's what I was, because I still had an off switch,
Yeah.
Sarah. I still could turn it off even if I didn't want to. And the example of, if I was traveling away from my fiance, away from we were engaged at the time, and I was in a hotel where, with the time change, I didn't have to check in with anyone. I would drink myself, like drink, if I didn't have to stop for anyone. But most days I could if I wanted to. And I knew then deep down it had more control over me than I had over it. And so I went into a 12-step program. I entered into AA and I'm what I call a high bottom. At that time, I was very high bottom. I walked in, I didn't have to go to treatment. I wasn't seeing a therapist. I just knew that I had a disordered relationship with alcohol and I wanted to change it. And I knew that I would have no problem for me calling myself an alcoholic. Alcoholic means the lover of alcohol. I loved it,
Yeah.
right? And so I went in and I worked the program and I stayed sober another 15 years.
Wow.
Now I tell the story this way. I was sober, then I was dry because I stopped working a program. And then I was in a bit of a relapse period, prelapse.
Yeah.
Before I relapsed and started thinking more about, how I can find the comfort. I needed the comfort. I was keeping up with the Joneses. Part of my bio is that I say I've recovered from alcoholism, workaholism, Wonder Woman syndrome, and the almighty, and I coined this phrase, the Pinterest perfect wife, life, and mother syndrome.
Oh my goodness. Those are like, I want to talk about each one of those because they're very creative labels.
Thank you.
Pause for a second. You're throwing out terms that I think people who maybe haven't ever had a recovery story or don't have family members in addiction or recovered from addiction, they may not even know what some of these things are.
Sure.
This is interesting, this high bottom. What does that mean?
So you often hear people refer to rock bottom.
Okay, I figured. Yeah.
Right? So people are at rock bottom. They might have had DUIs, thrown in jail. They've lost their husband,
worse.
their marriage, whatever, right? And that's very rock bottom. And people think that you need to hit rock bottom
right
in order to get recovery. And that's not true. Okay. Your bottom can come up to meet you. And I had a high bottom. I didn't lose a lot, but I knew I wanted to change how I was feeling in a good way. Right? I used alcohol to change how I was feeling because I was uncomfortable and I wanted the ease and comfort of the alcohol. But I wanted to then change how I was feeling in a good way. I didn't want the dependence on alcohol. I wanted to get up and have more energy and deal with my, say personal problems or whatever, and just deal with them head on. Yeah. There was a bit of friction with my fiance. He's like, why do you always have to have the most drinks when we go out? And I'm like, yes, but I am still so high functioning. I have a job. I have this. I have that. I'm not like so-and-so. Even I use those terms. I'm not like so-and-so who has a real alcohol problem. Guess what? You don't have to have a real alcohol problem in order to eliminate it, reduce it, change it, change the relationship. You don't have to. And in today's day and age, a lot of people are self-medicating just to feel better. And, it's no longer just a glass of wine in the evening. It's a bottle. Yeah. A lot of people are drinking a bottle of wine a night. And, that prevents a lot of, keeps you from being present to those around you, creates a lot of anxiety in the morning. Physically, it's not good for your body. And so people are sick, they're tired, they're sick and tired.
They're inflamed.
We
talked about weight loss earlier.
Yeah. So I just, I got in, and then life got to be too much. And really, I think Russell Brand has said, the antidote to addiction is connection. And so there I was, my life was imploding. I wasn't seeing a therapist. I wasn't working with anyone on my stuff. I was trying to do everything, be everything, create magical moments for my daughter, be the best.
The Pinterest mom. Yes.
The Pinterest mom, right? I think I've shared this before in a podcast. One Easter, I took those little peeps and put them in a vase, and then you put another vase inside, and you have the matching flowers that complement the little peeps, bunnies and whatever. I'm like, I look back and I think, where did I even have the time for that? I was raising a baby. I was traveling for work. But you drive, you try to keep up with appearances. My insides were so uncomfortable, and I was unhappy about a lot of things that I wasn't dealing with. And I had to make my outsides look good.
Right. That picture perfect presentation. I got it all together.
Yeah.
But inside you're crumbling. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was crumbling. And so I picked up. I reverted back. So I know you've done the 180 podcast and you have 180 counseling, right? Because you turn around. I did a full 360. I went back to an old place that I was in.
Yeah, that was comfortable and you knew, right?
Yeah. And I knew I'd get some relief. I'd get some relief. And so I, unfortunately, when you have the disease of alcoholism, you only get worse, never better. And so over those years of sobriety, 15 years, my disease continued to progress, even though I wasn't drinking. And when I picked up, I really started to spiral down. And it was 2.5 years, and I could not get sober again. I went to intensive outpatient. I went to therapy. I went to treatment centers, to detox centers. I lived in sober living. I had a sober coach. I had a sober companion. I did it all.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand why I couldn't get sober again, because I'd lived, my 20s and 30s for the most part, and 40s. Sober. And I felt like I was just, letting my family down over and over again. I didn't give up though.
Yeah.
I kept trying. Like I said, I just went through the whole list of all the things I tried because I didn't want
all
to
with the family. Were you working during that time as well?
While
you were?
Oh no, sorry. I took a leave of absence.
You did. Yeah.
I couldn't focus on work and recovery. And because I kept relapsing, so I'd get 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. I had up to 9 months and relapsed. And I couldn't focus on work and that, because once I picked up a drink, I couldn't stop.
Wow.
So in that 2.5 years, I only actually drank about 7 months because I would pick up and I would go so far down that I would have to end up going to treatment.
Yeah.
But That's not everybody's story,
Right,
though.
right.
Right. So if someone's just struggling with their relationship with alcohol and they went to their therapist, one of the 180 therapists, or went to, called me as an intervention
Mhm.
specialist, recovery specialist, it wouldn't be, oh, well, you're going to go away to a 30-day inpatient treatment facility. You don't have to, you don't have to hit a rock bottom to get help.
Right.
And you don't have to take extreme measures to begin the change of changing your relationship with
Yeah.
alcohol.
Yeah.
Because there's different level. I mean, you must see it in your practices, different on it, say on a continuum of different levels of use.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of things are spectrums, right? I
Right.
mean, anxiety disorders can be a spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
addiction could be a spectrum. What was the point, though, during that when you were working, and you just couldn't make that turnaround? What was it that finally clicked or,
That
really was
clicked
the
and
thing?
broke me
Yeah.
or clicked and
Oh,
healed me?
well, tell me which one.
Okay. Well, clicked
Tell me
and
both.
broke me, I finally was so empty. I had literally had nothing left. I was
Mm,
exhausted physically, emotionally, spiritually. I would say I was physically, emotionally, and spiritually bankrupt.
wow.
There was nothing left. I'd always been, my mom was dying at the time.
Mm,
I was working, I was having a really challenging year in my sales year. I was afraid, what if I don't make my number, or I'm not getting enough commission checks. I was trying to keep up and manage, and so a lot of fear came in,
mm,
and so that's what broke me. I
yeah.
just was so empty and my life imploded. Nothing terrible happened, but
Right.
it was the combination of all of those things. And then I would have to say, it's I know it's going to sound not glib, but I kept trying. I wouldn't give up. I wanted to get sober again, and I wanted to figure out, and I was going to AA and I was going to treatment centers, and I had all this knowledge in my head,
Right.
but it had to travel the longest 6-inch journey of my entire life to my heart,
Mhm,
where I was
mhm.
actually living it, where I
Yeah.
fully surrendered, where I developed the discipline
Mm,
and the surrender so I could live in the flow.
interesting. I like
So,
that.
and yes,
Live
thank
in
you.
the flow.
Live in the flow. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't make it up. I saw it on Instagram, and it's a Venn diagram.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Mhm.
And it's discipline and surrender.
Okay. In
And
that
the
middle
middle
section.
is the flow. The crossover is the flow. So by gaining the discipline, I go to AA meetings, I pray, I meditate,
Mhm.
I grow and expand my life physically, emotionally, spiritually. I eat very well. I get good sleep. I take care of myself, all through the 9 dimensions of wellness,
Mhm.
which, everything. I try to be judicious with my spending and, trying to take care of myself all around. So that's the discipline.
Yeah.
And then the surrender, which is where I had the biggest challenge,
Mm.
allowing things to happen. For me, my higher power is God.
Mhm.
Other people say the universe. There's a
Mhm.
larger force at work out there that has a plan. So surrendering to that,
Yeah.
I do whatever I can to take care of things, then I leave the outcomes up to how they happen. It's the worrying about them and trying to control them
Yeah.
that does me in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I heard somebody say a long time ago, control the controllables. There's so much outside of our control. Control can be an illusion. It
Hmm.
actually is an illusion. I mean, yes, we can control that we're putting this coffee
Right.
in our mouth, but what happens after that is kind of out of our control. So control is an illusion.
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
We can't
yeah.
control how, I'm guarding myself as we're sitting here chatting. How will this be interpreted? How will this be interpreted? Eh, That's the conversation I'm having in the back of my mind while we're chatting. And that I can't control.
Right.
Right. And I have to hope that it will just land how it lands, and whoever needs to hear it or is interested in
Mhm.
hearing something, or they might be able to get a little nugget of
Yep.
through our discussion and say, hey, listen, I think maybe I'll just try not to drink a bottle of wine a night and see how it goes.
Yeah, let's get back to the bottle of wine thing. What do you think about this idea of mommy wine culture? I know that that's like lingo, or,
Hmm.
people talk about that. Do you think that's real? Do you think, in your experience, moms and working moms and stay at home moms really struggle with wine?
I would say in my experience and in my observation, I would say yes. Because I see pictures on Facebook where mommy has a big goblet of wine, and no judgment, hey?
Well, yeah.
We're all trying. Oh, there, my Canadian popped out. Did you hear that? Did you hear
it? I did hear
it? So no judgment. We all do what we have to do to survive.
Yeah.
But you see, mom's wine night out, or, they're getting together in the afternoon, or the birthday parties. I mean, I had a birthday party, I can say from my own experience, and I was sober at the time. I had a birthday party for my daughter, and it was in the afternoon, and I just put out wine just in case, right? Because people knew I wasn't really a drinking. And there were some moms that, started right at 11 a.m. Like it was just nothing. And again, people, not everyone who drinks has a problem.
Right. Right. Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
And no one can diagnose someone else's problem. But we know inside if we are trying to escape from something, if we're trying to get relief from something, having these challenging feelings, maybe it's really tough being two working parents. And so, I get a glass of wine, I can relax, or I can forget about having a difficult conversation and not not dealing with things head on. So, it's those kind of things. That's why therapy is so good. And I'm not trying to sit here like plug 180 counseling, but I was alone. I kept everything bottled up, working with someone, talking through things. We are all suffering a little bit of PTSD from that big thing that happened a couple of years ago.
For sure. Yeah.
Right? Lives have changed.
Yeah. Things are more difficult for most people. And a lot of people do cope with alcohol. And they started actually, I think a lot of people started during COVID.
Yes.
Marriages maybe were crumbling because people were getting on each other's nerves.
Yeah, you're around the whole, yes.
Yeah. So it's easy to, let's just drink a little and chill out.
Right.
And so I do think some of that started back then for a lot of people.
Well, and working from home.
For sure.
So the day drinking picked up. I know I do service work and detoxes, and many people there said, well, I started day drinking because I was at home.
Right.
And, one of the statistics, I'm not very good with statistics, like my memory, we talked about why, women of a certain age, my memory goes. But I did commit this one to memory. Within the first 6 months of lockdown of COVID, everybody working from home, alcohol sales increased 267%.
Wow.
267%. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
Deaths from alcohol increased. Overdoses, suicides. So yes, a lot. It was a very difficult time. The challenge is for the alcohol spectrum that we were talking about, once you start to go down, and I referenced it earlier, I lost my off switch. When you lose your off switch, you can never go back. The spectrum with alcohol, it seems you always continue down the continuum unless you stop and arrest it.
Right. Yeah, because I'm not an addiction specialist, but I know they talk about there's like the abstinence, and then there's what's the other angle where you can have just a little bit.
Oh, social drinking. Yeah. Right? Social or moderate drinking. Yeah. So here's the Shauna continuum. Okay. So I'm not a clinician. Yeah. And this is not founded in research, but this is how.
This is maybe your lived experience.
My lived experience. You have the social who can take it or leave it. Like my husband. He might have a drink. He might not have a drink. 20 years, I've never even seen him tipsy. Okay. So he can take it or leave it.
Right.
Then you have the moderate drinker who may be following the guy, like just have a couple drinks a week. Then you have people who may have a drink every day. So I looked up before we met what the National Institute of Health recommends for daily drinking, or the limits that they recommend, right? Like have no more than.
Right.
And it's 1 drink a day for women, which is a 5-ounce pour of wine. These are 12.
Okay.
So
maybe
about
half of
that much per day.
Right.
Right. So there's not, anyway, so that's would say just like a person who's having a drink, say for the health benefits, if there are any. And then, you go from Then a little more abuse. You're abusing it. You're binge drinking. You drink more than you should. You drink more than you want to.
Right.
Dependent, the people who have to have a drink, or the people that maybe started day drinking and now physically they're dependent on it because they have shakes in the morning. You know, people do joke around about having shakes in the morning. It's serious when you have the shakes. You know, when you're taking something to help you with the shakes, you do need to have some medical detox. It's not safe to just say, you know, if you're drinking a bottle of wine a night, don't detox yourself. I will say that. Right. You know, it can be very dangerous to detox from alcohol.
Yeah.
You always ask for help. So you have, so the social moderate, abuse, that's the binge drinking, then the dependence, and then, you know, you're over on the addiction side where once you pick up, you can't stop.
Right.
And so, I went all the way through.
So you've mentioned high bottom. You've mentioned, you know, your turning point, the point where you were like, I've just got to do something different. And so what happened after that? You worked all these programs, you were turning it around. And then what next?
Oh, and then what next? It was COVID. So I had resigned from my job as a software salesperson. I knew that it was not going to serve me. I, had some recovery under me. I really said, what is it that I want to do with my life?
Yeah.
And I decided that I wanted to spend the second half of my life giving back, or, my second act was going to be about others, not about me.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And help other women, because I felt so alone. I felt so alone going through this. I couldn't talk to anybody. I wanted to help reduce the stigma. I recover out loud. Obviously, I'm on these podcasts sharing my story because I subscribe to when we recover loudly, we prevent others from dying silently.
I literally just saw that quote the other day on Facebook. Somebody else shared that.
Oh, that was me. I shared it.
Maybe it was you.
It was me.
But that's fantastic.
But yes, someone else shared it. I saw that too. Someone else shared it and I thought they took mine, but I didn't create that.
But that's
I
so
saw
great.
it and I loved it because it's so true.
Right, right. And it really can be applicable for anything. I mean, people who are, in recovery from cancer, some people like to keep that private, but then,
we need the connection. We need
we need to hear other people's stories. So
they're
that
inspiring.
Exactly.
And you're not alone.
Yeah.
It's being alone that is that isolation. And when you're drinking or using, you tend to isolate more. You say no to going out with people. You just want to be alone. You want to, and it's really difficult. So yes, I do recover loudly to keep or to help others from or prevent others from dying silently. So, there's I have ADHD too. So I went down a little bit of a tangent there on my favorite saying. But I wanted to do to help people in the addiction field. So I left software sales and I founded my company, Return to Joy Recovery, and we do intervention services. We don't do the ambush style intervention.
Right.
It's called invitational, Arise Invitational Intervention, and it's very slowly escalating. And we are the experts here. I visit treatment centers all the time to do research. I meet with, I'm always networking here to make sure I have referral resources so that if someone comes to me and says, I'm struggling, I'll say, do you have a therapist? Do you have an addiction specialist? Do you have this? I have some resources for you. So it doesn't mean a call to Return to Joy Recovery doesn't mean you're going to, have to run away to a 30-day program. And we do safe transport and we do some sober companion work for people coming home from treatment. And I have really felt strongly that this is what I'm going to do I'm doing it for my second act because I don't want others to have to suffer alone or to not know where to go.
Yeah.
I found a care team through a therapist, a psychiatrist, an IOP, which is intensive outpatient, who helped me get on my way, and they loved me and supported me and cared for me and kept giving me the clinical recommendations. And then we had to try something else because I kept relapsing. And then, like I said, that journey from my head to my heart and the miracle happened.
I remember you mentioned before we jumped on the podcast that the website you created came to you before you even. Well, tell me a little bit about that story.
So I knew that I wanted to help people. And back in 2017, before I even relapsed, I bought the website returntojoyrecovery.com because I had lost my joy.
Right.
I was always known as Happy Shiny Shauna. Early in my life, when I was uncomfortable in my skin, I pretended to be happy and shiny because I didn't want to be vulnerable and open. Later in my life, I was truly happy, shiny Shauna. I was filled with joy. I loved my life. I loved the challenges until I didn't.
Right.
Until things changed, until I stopped caring for myself mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, until I was driven by something else. And I lost my joy. And so I was trying, that was what I would call the prelapse phase. I was trying to find my joy again. I was doing meditation. I was trying anything.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I thought, oh, well, I'll do some coaching. I'll do some recovery coaching. I hadn't relapsed yet. And I bought Return to Joy Recovery. And then lo and behold, now 7 years later, I'm using it. Well, it's actually down right now because it's changing web hosts. So, so it should.
Don't go to it right now.
Don't go to it today. But that's this is going to launch 2 weeks from now, probably. So I'm sure it'll be fine by then.
Yeah.
But, So
I just think that's so. I mean, call it what you want. Serendipitous. Could it? Was it God prompting you to do something that He had for you 7 years later?
Right.
That's where I lean in.
Yes, I'm with you.
But that's just so cool that you were prompted to do that. And then, but I think that's actually really important because there's probably people listening that feel prompted. They feel a tug at their heart to do something but they're afraid. They don't know what the outcome's going to be. And so then they don't do that thing.
Right. They don't take that risk.
Yeah. But sometimes you just do it afraid, take that risk. And it might happen immediately, or it might be 7 years from now. Didn't mean to hit the microphone. It might be 7 years from now, But if they just take that risk and just jump and try it.
You
never know.
You never know what happens. Yeah. And look what happened in those 7 years.
Yeah.
I became a low bottom drunk. We talked about high bottom. Right. And I say that affectionately. I'm calling myself a low bottom drunk. It's a term of endearment for me. I won't share exclusively, but if anyone asks me on the street, tell me, the depth of your story. I can assure you that it is pretty low. And I'm grateful for it. One of the questions to prepare for today that we had talked about was, what would I say to my 16-year-old self? And I thought I would just tell her, keep doing what you're doing. I wouldn't actually have given myself that advice, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Everything I went through has shaped me to be the woman I am today. I wouldn't be the woman I am without all of the challenges. I also wouldn't be able to do this really intensive work with very serious people who were seriously suffering from alcohol addiction. I wouldn't be able to identify with them if I had just stayed sober and not had this relapse. Because remember, I told you, I walked into an AA meeting. Right. I was fine. And my thought was, well, anyone can just walk into an AA meeting, right? That's not the case. That's not the case, because depending on how far down you are on the spectrum, there's different interventions that need to happen. And so I am grateful. I am so grateful for that relapse and that everything that I went through, because it's shaped me. Yeah. I did a turnaround.
You did. And that's actually an interesting point. We're talking about joy. I mean, I do think true joy is when you're able to look back on the highs and the lows, the valleys and the mountains, and you're able to say, wow, I'm thankful for all of it.
Right.
Because, it's gotten me to where I'm at today. And I wouldn't be where I'm at without those, mountains and valleys, which we all have in life.
Yeah. And I mean, since I've been sober, there's been all sorts of challenges. I got a concussion, a tree fell on my head.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. I've gone through a couple of depressive episodes. And, it doesn't mean my life is perfect.
Right.
And starting, starting up a business and growing a business has inherent challenges. Right. So I'm doing all that stuff. I used to work for a corporation. I had a marketing department, a billing department, whatever. Now I'm doing it all
you're doing it yourself. Yeah.
So, I believe just what you were saying, you can have joy through all of those things.
Yeah.
Happiness, maybe not.
Right.
Happiness can be fleeting, but true joy and peace and serenity, it's possible. It's attainable.
Yeah.
I know because I have it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah. Wow. Very, very great story.
Well, thanks, Sarah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Anything else that you think's pretty important to share with the audience about, addiction recovery stories or any other kind of turning life around moments that you've had?
Well, I think one thing I want to definitely share is early intervention can save a lot of heartbreak. When I say that, calling a treatment specialist or calling a recovery services person or an interventionist doesn't mean like you're going to be swept away like on the television show.
Right.
Okay. And the earlier you intervene, the easier it is to get the help you need. You don't have to, that's it. You don't have to hit rock bottom to reach out for help.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a sister who you think might need some help, or say you had a family member who was sick and tired and whatever. This is totally separate and they're not getting out and walking or eating healthfully, a spouse say. And you would intervene and say, hey, how can I help you? Let's cook some healthy meals. That's intervening.
Right.
Right. So intervening doesn't mean have a negative connotation. You can intervene to offer a lifeline to someone, and they don't have to be living on the street or homeless or have lost their job or whatever. It could be someone whose life is going very well, but their dependence on alcohol is a lot and things are starting to catch up with them.
Yeah. How would you start that conversation with a family member, even a spouse, if you notice what you just said, that their life is starting to maybe revolve around alcohol or they're developing a dependency?
That's a good question. I would actually not address them without speaking to a recovery specialist.
Right, to get some assistance.
Or a therapist, your own therapist. Get some assistance, get some direction, have a plan together.
Right.
Because you might be overreacting too. You might have seen them drunk, and if you, I mean, if you're going to intervene, oftentimes you know that there is an issue, and it's really important to approach it with love, without the shame, blame, and guilt, to have the right words. The last thing you want to do is back them into a corner. That's why I say we're so different than the show intervention. We don't do it like that. They're invited to participate.
Well, because they need to want to do it, right?
Or we can help them want to do it.
Okay, yeah.
We can help them want to do it. We can share how we're feeling, but it's facilitated, right? Like it's not just going to dump. Like you have to be very careful because you want to eliminate the shame, blame, and guilt.
Yeah.
I mean, backing someone into a corner, they'll just get angry and
defensive
and whatever. So how do you approach it with love? And I would say, if someone wanted to just approach someone, it would be, I love you very much. I have some concerns about your drinking. I'd love to talk to a specialist, or would you be open to talking to a specialist with me?
Yeah. The invitation.
The invitational style, right? So if you didn't want to call first, you could say someone could approach with that. But it is a treacherous road, right? Or tenuous. You know, you have to be very careful because you don't want to push them away.
Right. And make it worse.
And
I think that's probably what a lot of people fear is that if they intervene or ask some questions, they're going to push the person away and maybe make it worse. And maybe they've even already had that experience with that person, so they don't want to do that again.
Right. And they've lashed out or whatever. And when you come from a place of love and you're able to have the right words and have a plan in place, and, the Arise invitational style, I'll just touch on it quickly. It really takes the person of concern out of the center, because we look at we go back a couple generations, we do a genogram, we look at where there's addiction, we look at, trauma, everything, and how that has impacted this generation of, say, where the person here, that the person of concern is, or the interested party, and, this generation. And we're focused then on looking at the strengths, because, there's a lot of resilience that the families have gone through. But when you do a genogram and you're one person in this huge big thing where there's trauma, there's mental health issues, there's whatever, you don't feel like you're being singled out.
You can see a bigger picture.
You can see a bigger picture.
Why, how you got there.
How you got there, why, the strengths that you can also pull from because they've made it through, you're here. But the whole thing is that we want to approach a level of healing to pass down a legacy of recovery and healing.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
So that's why, and it's gradually escalating. If someone doesn't want to go away to inpatient treatment, we work with them on gradually escalating. So no one is gooned or a bag over their head and taken away. Like, it is not that.
Yeah.
And they have a sober support network. The whole family participates in their healing. As you know, you're a clinician. So the family systems disease, everybody's suffering from something, and how do they get the help they need as well? So if everybody's working on healing, the person doesn't feel as singled out. And we're trying to really remove the shame, blame, and guilt.
Yeah, which is so important. There's so much shame and blame and guilt, judgment being thrown around in general. So removing that.
And we do it to ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? We can be our hardest judges too.
Absolutely.
But yes, I think we live in we'll have to have a coffee another day. We'll talk about the culture of judgment.
Sure. Let's do that.
But thank you so much, Sarah.
Say your website again so people listening can go to that.
It's returntojoyrecovery.com.
Perfect. And I hope many will reach out and see what you're offering to the area. I think it's so pertinent and pivotal what you're doing.
And it's just a conversation, right? I have 30-minute, free conversation. Anything, just you need an ear, give me a call. You need some support, give me a call. So it's because I might not be the right fit.
Right. You might have other recommendations.
And I would then definitely refer out. I'm aware, someone called me, they had a challenging teenager, wasn't alcohol or drugs, and I just said, that's out of my, but let me put you in touch with someone who can help you.
Right. And I think that's what's so awesome. I think a lot of people in addiction space, mental health space, we know people, right? And if we're not the one, we want people to be better. And so we're going to put you in contact with someone who can help you with that thing.
And we're working on the back end to know each other. We do these coffee and connecting. I just plug for Donna, who manages all your media and marketing. She's always so great about connecting others. We're like big switchboards or hubs, connecting each other so that we have the resources for people when they reach out for help.
Well, I know that your journey was a struggle, but I, for one, am grateful that I got to know you in this season and that you're, helping others in such a big, glorious way. I think it's wonderful. So thanks again.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you for all you do, opening up, more and more offices to be able to serve the greater public is really, really important, because there was a time there where people were waiting 6 and 9 months for therapy appointments, and y'all have you can get people in quickly. And I'm grateful for that, because who wants to wait for so long when you finally admit you need some help, right? So thank you for all you're doing.
Yeah, appreciate that. Well, thanks for listening today. Have a great one.